Hello. The first time I saw Emily, she was standing in line at a small cafe just outside our college campus. She had this effortless charm, the kind that made people want to be near her. I noticed her before she noticed me, her auburn hair catching the light, the way she tapped her fingers against the counter as she waited for her coffee, lost in thought. When she turned and met my eyes, she smiled, a simple, casual thing, but it felt like a spark catching fire. I was sitting alone at a corner table, pretending to study but really just zoning out over my textbook. She must have noticed because when she walked past, she stopped and tilted her head. "You look like you're having a real hard time with that book," she teased, nodding toward my notes. I chuckled and leaned back. "More like the book is having a hard time with me." That was all it took. She pulled out the chair across from me and sat down as if we had known each other forever. We talked for hours, laughing over our shared love for old movies, debating whether coffee or tea was the superior drink, and swapping stories about our childhoods. By the time the cafe was closing, I already knew I didn't just want to see her again, I needed to. Dating Emily was like stepping into a different world, one that was brighter, more exciting. She had this way of making even the simplest things feel special. A walk in the park became an adventure. A late-night drive turned into an impromptu concert with the radio blasting. She made life feel full as if every moment had meaning. We got married young, just a few years after we met. I had just started my career as a police officer, and she had landed a promising job in marketing. We weren't rich, but we were happy. We rented a cozy little apartment in the city, saving up for the house we dreamed of. Those early years were filled with late-night takeout, weekend getaways, and the thrill of building a life together. She was my best friend, my partner in everything. When I looked at her, I saw my future. And back then, I truly believed that nothing could ever change that. Married life with Emily was everything I had hoped for. It wasn't just about love. It was about partnership, about knowing that no matter what, we had each other's backs. We weren't just a couple, we were a team. Our first apartment was small but filled with warmth. The walls were lined with pictures from our college days, our wedding, and the trips we managed to take on our tight budget. We had mismatched furniture, a hand-me-down couch from my parents, and a tiny kitchen where we often bumped into each other while cooking. But none of that mattered. Those early years felt like an adventure, two young people figuring out life together, dreaming about the future. Emily was the kind of woman who made a house feel like home. She loved decorating, always finding little ways to add a personal touch to our space. She'd bring home fresh flowers on Fridays, light candles in the evening, and leave sweet notes in my lunchbox when I worked late shifts. She was thoughtful like that, always making the ordinary feel special. My job as a police officer kept me busy, sometimes too busy. There were late nights, long shifts, and the kind of stress that comes with the job. But Emily never complained. She understood, supported me, and made sure that whenever I came home, I could leave the weight of work at the door. Her career in marketing took off quickly. She had a sharp mind and a way with people, and before long, she was climbing the ladder at her firm. I was proud of her, of how driven and talented she was. We used to sit at the dinner table, talking about our days, laughing over work stories, and planning our next vacation. We weren't perfect, but we were happy. We had our little routines, Sunday morning pancakes, movie nights on Fridays, lazy Saturdays spent in bed talking about everything and nothing. It felt like we were still those two college kids who had met in that cafe, still just as in love. And when we finally saved enough to buy our first house, it felt like the beginning of something even greater. Buying our first house was one of the happiest moments of our lives. It wasn't a mansion, but to us, it was perfect. A charming two-story home with a wraparound porch, a small backyard, and enough space to grow into. Emily had spent weeks planning every detail before we even moved in. She had a Pinterest board filled with home decor ideas, color palettes, and DIY projects she was eager to start. The day we got the keys, we celebrated with takeout and a bottle of wine, sitting on the floor of our empty living room, dreaming about the life we'd build here. "This is it," she had said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Our forever home." I had believed her. Emily threw herself into making the house feel like ours. She painted the walls in soft, warm tones, decorated with framed photos from our travels, and filled the house with little details that made it feel alive. She turned the spare room into a cozy office, lined with bookshelves and soft lighting. The backyard became her passion project. She planted flowers, set up a small vegetable garden, and even talked about getting a dog. I loved watching her make our house into a home. It was in those moments, seeing the joy on her face, that I knew I had made the right choice in marrying her. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. My work as a police officer kept me busy, but I always looked forward to coming home. Emily would greet me with a kiss, ask about my day, and we'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset with a couple of beers in hand. We started talking about the future, about maybe starting a family one day. It was just talk for now, but it felt like the natural next step. We had everything we needed, and for the first time, I felt like we had truly made it. Our friends often told us we were the perfect couple. And in those quiet moments, when it was just the two of us, I believed it too. I had no idea that everything was about to change. At first, it was just little things. Things so small they barely registered. Emily had always been affectionate, the type to greet me with a warm hug when I got home, to rest her hand on my arm as we talked, to curl up against me on the couch while we watched TV. But lately, she had started pulling away. It was subtle at first, excuses about being tired, distracted. But I noticed. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe work was just wearing her down. She had been taking on bigger projects, staying late at the office more often. When I asked, she brushed it off. Just a busy season, she had said, giving me a tired smile. Nothing to worry about. I wanted to believe her. But then there were the other things. She started dressing differently, not drastically, but enough for me to notice. More effort in her appearance, new lingerie that I never saw her wear for me. Her phone, once casually left around the house, was now always with her. She changed her passcode. When I asked why, she laughed it off. Work stuff, you know. Just being careful. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, the one telling me something wasn't right. Then, one night, I woke up to the faint glow of her phone screen. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me, typing quickly. When she noticed I was awake, she turned the screen away, locking the phone before setting it down. "Who are you texting?" I asked, my voice thick with sleep. "No one," she said too quickly. "Just a work email." At 2 in the morning? I didn't push. I just laid back down, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. That my wife, my Emily, would never betray me. But the doubt had already crept in. And once it was there, it was impossible to ignore. Doubt has a way of creeping into your mind, no matter how hard you try to push it away. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overthinking, reading too much into Emily's behavior. But once the thought was planted, it was impossible to ignore. It started with small things. A shift in her habits. She had always been predictable, someone who thrived on routine. But lately, those routines were changing. She had started coming home later than usual, blaming it on extra projects at work. She wasn't the type to bring work home, let alone stay at the office after hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. Her career was demanding, and I knew she wanted to prove herself. But then came the excuses. She'd disappear for hours on weekends, saying she was out running errands. When I asked if she wanted me to join her, she'd hesitate before making up a reason why she needed to go alone. "Just grocery shopping," she'd say. "Nothing exciting. Besides, you deserve a break after work." It was a perfectly reasonable excuse. But then why did she never come back with groceries? Then there was her phone. Emily had never been secretive with her phone before. We used to sit on the couch, sharing dumb videos and laughing at memes together. But now, she kept it close, too close. It was always face down, always on silent. And whenever I walked into the room, she'd quickly swipe away whatever was on the screen. One night, I reached for her phone absent-mindedly to check the time. The moment my fingers brushed against it, she snatched it away so fast you'd think I was reaching for a live grenade. "Work stuff," she said with a nervous laugh. "Confidential." Emily worked in marketing, not the CIA. What could possibly be so confidential that even I couldn't see it? I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her. But it didn't stop there. She started dressing differently. Not that she was dressing up for me. No, this was different. New lingerie, ones I had never seen her wear for me. Perfume that wasn't for date nights but for client meetings. A gym membership that she suddenly signed up for after years of saying she hated working out. "You know, just trying to be healthier," she said with a shrug when I asked about it. She wasn't wrong. She had been going to the gym, but she never seemed particularly tired afterward. She never complained about sore muscles, never mentioned what workouts she was doing. When I asked about it, she gave vague answers, like she was trying to keep the conversation as short as possible. I started paying closer attention, watching her, noticing the little things. The way she'd smile at her phone screen when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she suddenly started going out for girls' nights, but never mentioned which friends she was meeting. And then there were the times she smelled different. Not just perfume, something else. Something subtle. Faint traces of cologne that didn't belong to me. It was all small, insignificant things on their own. But together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was working too much, making things up in my head. That Emily, my Emily, would never betray me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I didn't really know my wife at all. Doubt was no longer just a passing thought. It was an obsession. I tried to ignore it at first, convincing myself that Emily would never betray me. But the more I noticed, the late nights, the secrecy, the sudden changes, the harder it became to shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I wasn't the type to go snooping. In all the years we'd been together, I had never once felt the need to check her phone, read through her emails, or question where she went. But now I couldn't help myself. I needed answers. One evening, Emily came home later than usual. I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep when I heard her come in. The soft rustling of fabric, the click of her phone being set down on the nightstand. But there was something else. A faint scent, one that didn't belong to her usual perfume. It was musky, masculine, a cologne I didn't recognize. I clenched my jaw, keeping my breathing steady, waiting for her to settle under the covers. But instead of sliding into bed next to me, she sat at the edge, her phone screen illuminating her face. She was texting someone. I could hear the quiet tapping of her fingers against the screen. I turned slightly, just enough to see her reflection in the mirror across the room. She was smiling. A deep, sinking feeling settled in my stomach. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the shower running. Emily's phone was still on the nightstand, her screen locked. My heart pounded as I reached for it, my fingers hovering over the screen. I knew her passcode once. A long time ago, but she had changed it. That wasn't a coincidence. Setting the phone back down, I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands over my face. My mind was racing. Was I overthinking this? Was I turning small things into something bigger than they were? Or was my wife really hiding something from me? I started watching her more closely. When she left for work, I took note of how long she was gone. When she said she was going to the gym, I checked the time she left against the time she returned. When she said she was out with friends, I asked subtle questions, nothing too direct, just enough to see if she was lying. And every time, something felt off. One evening, I decided to test something. I told Emily I was picking up an extra shift at work, meaning I'd be out late. She seemed almost relieved. Not disappointed. Not annoyed that I wouldn't be home for dinner. Just relieved. That night, instead of going to work, I parked my car a few streets away from our house and waited. Hours passed. The house remained dark. Then, just after 9 p.m., I saw headlights pull into our driveway. Not mine. Not Emily's. Someone else's. My pulse thundered in my ears as I watched a shadowy figure step out of the car and walk toward my front door. I couldn't see his face, but I knew, deep in my gut, that I had been right all along. Emily was hiding something, and I was about to find out exactly what it was. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded against my ribs, my breath coming in slow, controlled exhales. The headlights of the unknown car in my driveway flickered off, leaving only the glow of the street lamp to illuminate the figure stepping out. A man. Tall. Confident. Moving like he belonged there. My stomach twisted into knots as I watched him walk up to my front door, my door. He didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. Instead, he pulled out a key and let himself inside. A fucking key. My hands clenched into fists. That meant this wasn't some impulsive mistake. It wasn't some stranger she had met at a bar. This was planned. Organized. This man had been in my house before. I didn't even remember getting out of my car. 1 second I was sitting there, staring at the door that had just closed behind him, and the next I was moving, walking fast, my mind blank except for the pulsing rage in my chest. I reached the front door and pushed it open without hesitation. The house was dark except for the soft glow coming from upstairs, our bedroom. They were in my bedroom. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. I could hear muffled voices now, low and intimate. Then came a quiet laugh, Emily's laugh. The same one she used to give me. The moment I reached the hallway, I knew I had crossed the point of no return. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling out into the darkened hallway. From inside, I heard the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing, the rustle of sheets, the creak of the mattress. My entire body went cold. I stepped forward and pushed the door open. There they were. Emily was on all fours, the sheets tangled beneath her. The man behind her, half-naked, muscular, familiar, froze mid-motion, his hands gripping her waist. For a split second, the world seemed to stop. Emily's eyes locked onto mine. Her face twisted in horror. She screamed, scrambling to cover herself with the blanket, but it was too late. I had already seen everything. The man turned to face me, and that's when I recognized him. I knew exactly who he was. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just some guy. It was the criminal I had been hunting for months. The thief I had been trying to arrest. And now, he was screwing my wife in my own damn bed. The room filled with silence, thick and suffocating. Emily's mouth opened and closed like she was searching for words, but nothing came out. I didn't speak either. I just stood there, my jaw tight, my fists clenched, my pulse a steady roar in my ears. The man slowly started to move, as if he was thinking about running. But it was too late for that. Because I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a cop, and he was under arrest. The silence in the room was thick, suffocating. Emily clutched the blanket to her chest, her face pale with shock. The man, the criminal I had spent months chasing, was frozen, his half-naked body still looming over my wife. His eyes flicked between me and the door, calculating, weighing his options. But there were no options. Not for him. My training kicked in before my rage could take over. I reached for my belt, for my badge, for my gun, for my cuffs. Don't move. My voice was cold, steady. The kind of voice I used when I meant business. The man's body tensed. His jaw clenched. I could see the fight-or-flight instinct kicking in, his muscles coiling like a snake ready to strike. He knew exactly who I was. And he knew he was fucked. Emily gasped. W8. Shut up, Emily. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. The man lunged. Bad move. I was ready. I dodged his swing, slamming my fist straight into his ribs. He let out a sharp grunt, stumbling backward. His mistake. I took advantage of the opening and tackled him onto the floor, forcing his arm behind his back in one smooth motion. He fought. Hard. But I had years of experience, and I wasn't about to let this bastard escape, not after what I had just seen. The mattress shifted behind me. Emily screamed. Stop. Please, stop. I didn't stop. I pressed my knee against his back, holding him down as I grabbed my cuffs from my belt. The cold metal clicked around his wrist with satisfying finality. You're under arrest, asshole. The man groaned, his face pressed against the hardwood floor of the bedroom where he had just been screwing my wife. He struggled, but it was useless. My hands trembled, but not from the fight. From rage. From the sheer, unrelenting betrayal clawing at my chest. Emily was crying now, a mess of apologies and pleas, but I wasn't listening. I stood, dragging the man up with me. His lip was bleeding. Good. You have the right to remain silent, I growled, pushing him toward the hallway. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Emily grabbed my arm, desperate, frantic. Please, let me explain. It's not what you think. I turned to her for the first time, my gaze locking onto hers. Her face was streaked with tears. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Not what I think. My voice was low, dangerous. I gestured to the bed, the sheets still tangled, the unmistakable scent of sweat and sex lingering in the air. Her mouth opened, but she had no words. I shook my head. Save it. We're done. Then, without another word, I dragged her lover down the stairs and out the front door, out of my house, out of my life. The flashing red and blue lights greeted me as backup arrived. My colleagues stepped out of their patrol cars, their faces shifting from confusion to understanding as they took in the scene, me, holding the bastard in cuffs. My wife, standing barefoot in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes wide with terror. One of my fellow officers stepped forward. What the hell happened? I exhaled slowly, shoving the man toward him. Caught him breaking into my house. I locked eyes with the thief, my grip tightening on his cuffs. He knew exactly what I meant. He had broken into more than just my house. He had broken into my life, my marriage, my trust. But I was about to take everything from him. And Emily? She was next. The flashing red and blue lights painted the house in a chaotic glow as my colleagues hauled Emily's lover into the back of a patrol car. I stood on the front lawn, watching as they slammed the door shut behind him. The man, the bastard who had been screwing my wife, looked at me through the window, his expression a mix of anger and fear. Good. But he wasn't my concern anymore. Emily was. I turned back toward the house. She was standing in the doorway, barefoot, still clutching the blanket around her. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with tears. She looked broken, but not as broken as she had left me. I walked up the steps slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch between us. "I can explain," she whispered. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't belong to the man I used to be. "Explain." I gestured behind me, toward the cop car. "Go ahead, Emily. Explain how you've been fucking a wanted criminal in our bed. Explain how he had a key to my house. Explain why I came home to find you moaning under another man." She flinched like I had slapped her. It wasn't. She shook her head. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to get caught? Is that what you didn't mean to do?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Save it. I don't give a damn about your excuses. I only care about one thing now." She swallowed hard, her lip trembling. "What?" I pointed to the street. "Get the hell out of my house." Her eyes widened. What? "No. Please, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." I stepped inside, pushing past her. The house, the place I had once loved, where I had imagined building a future, felt tainted now. Emily followed me, frantic. "You can't just throw me out. This is my home too." I turned, my stare cold. "No, it's not." I reached into the drawer by the entrance, pulling out her set of keys. Then, without hesitation, I ripped the house key off the ring and tossed it onto the floor at her feet. Her hands trembled as she looked at it. You're serious. Dead serious." She shook her head, stepping closer. "You can't do this. I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." Her breathing hitched. "Please. We've been together for years. You can't just kick me out like I'm nothing." I clenched my jaw. "You made yourself nothing when you let another man into our bed." Her lip quivered. She reached out, trying to touch me, but I stepped back. "Don't." My voice was like steel. "You lost the right to touch me the second you spread your legs for someone else." Tears streamed down her face now. Shut up." She did. I walked past her, straight into the bedroom, the scene of her betrayal. The bed was still a mess, the sin of her infidelity still lingering in the air. I ignored the bile rising in my throat and headed for the closet. Every single gift I ever bought her? Gone. The jewelry? Mine. The designer bags? Mine. The clothes I paid for? Mine. I grabbed a suitcase, threw it onto the bed, and started stuffing her things inside. Not neatly, not carefully, just grabbing whatever belonged to her and shoving it in. Emily stood in the doorway, watching in stunned silence. When the suitcase was full, I zipped it shut, grabbed the handle, and wheeled it past her. I didn't say a word as I dragged it through the house, out the front door, and dropped it onto the porch. Then I turned to her. "Get out." She didn't move. I grabbed her wrist, not gently, not cruelly, just firmly, and pulled her outside. "No, please. Don't do this," she sobbed. I let go and stepped back inside. "We're done." Then, before she could say another word, I slammed the door in her face. I locked it. Then I took a deep breath and exhaled. I was free. Emily banged on the door, screaming my name, but I didn't care. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down at the table, listening to the sound of her pleading, crying, begging. I took a sip and smiled. She was nothing to me now, and I had taken everything from her. I sat at the kitchen table, listening to the desperate pounding on the front door. Emily was still outside, still begging, still crying. "Please, just talk to me. Let me explain." I took another slow sip of my beer. I felt nothing. The woman I had loved, the one I had built a life with, made plans with, was gone. I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. I was looking at a liar, a cheater, a traitor. Another bang on the door. "You can't just throw me out. Where am I supposed to go?" I chuckled bitterly, setting my bottle down. "Not my problem, Emily." Her sobs turned into angry gasps. "You're a heartless bastard. After everything we've been through, you just throw me away like garbage?" I stood up, walked toward the door, and yanked it open. She stumbled back, startled, clutching the blanket around her. "Garbage?" I scoffed. "That's rich, coming from you. You threw us away the second you let another man inside you. So yeah, I'm treating you the way you treated our marriage, like something disposable." She shook her head rapidly, her breath hitching. No, it wasn't like that. It was a mistake." I laughed in her face. "A mistake? Emily, you gave him a fucking key to our house. You planned this. This wasn't a drunk one-night stand. This was an affair, a deliberate, sneaky, backstabbing affair." She wiped at her face, smearing her mascara. "But I love you." It didn't mean anything. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You love me. I let the words sit in the air, watching her squirm. Let me ask you something. Did you love me when he was inside you? Did you love me when you let him take his clothes off in my house? Did you love me when you locked your phone? When you started sneaking around? When you lied to my face over and over again? She couldn't answer. I took a slow breath and nodded. That's what I thought. I turned and stepped back inside. She tried to follow me, but I slammed the door shut again. This time, she didn't bang on it. I heard her sniffling outside, the sound of her suitcase wheels rolling down the steps. She was finally leaving, and I didn't feel an ounce of regret. I knew it wasn't over. Cheaters never give up that easily. The first text came just an hour later. Emily, I'm sorry. Please, can we talk? I stared at my screen for a long moment, then blocked her number. Then the email started. Begging. Pleading. Excuses. I wasn't thinking straight. I was feeling neglected. I don't even know why I did it. Please, we can fix this. I deleted every single one. Then she started reaching out through friends and family. My brother called first. Hey man, Emily's been trying to get a hold of me. She says she just wants to explain. I sighed. I don't need an explanation. She fucked another guy in my bed. That's all the explanation I need. He was silent for a moment. Then he muttered, yeah, fair enough. One by one, I cut her out completely. She had nowhere to run. No financial support. No house. No husband. She had lost everything. And me? I was finally free. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Emily had finally stopped trying to reach me. The messages had slowed. The desperate attempts to get me to talk had faded into silence. It was as if she had finally accepted what I had known from the moment I caught her. We were done. Forever. But, of course, cheaters never really let go. One evening, months after I had thrown her out, I heard a knock at my door. I already knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Emily stood there, hair disheveled, eyes hollow, wearing a jacket I had bought her years ago. She looked thinner, tired, drained, a shadow of the woman I had once loved. I didn't feel sorry for her. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. What do you want? Her lower lip trembled. Can I come in? I scoffed. Not a chance. She swallowed hard. I just need to talk to you. Please. I stared at her, waiting. I miss you. Her voice cracked. I messed up. I ruined everything, and I can't take it back. I lost my job. I had to move in with my sister. Everything is falling apart, and I just want to see if there's any chance. I laughed. A bitter, cruel sound. A chance? For what? You think we can just pretend none of this happened? That I can forget what I saw? What you did? She flinched, but held her ground. I don't expect you to forget. But I was stupid, and I regret it every single day. I still love you. I never stopped loving you. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You don't get to love me, Emily. You don't get to say those words after what you did. Love isn't what you did to me. Love isn't sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, sleeping with another man in my bed. Tears welled in her eyes. I was lost. I made a horrible mistake. No, you made a choice. I cut her off, voice like steel. A mistake is something you do once and regret immediately. You planned it. You gave him a key. You let him into my house, my bed, my life. That's not a mistake, Emily. That's betrayal. She choked on a sob. I just want a second chance. I stepped back inside, gripping the door. You got your second chance the second before you took your clothes off for him. You got your second chance every time you looked me in the eye and lied. You didn't take it. She shook her head. So that's it. You're just going to throw away everything we had. I gave her a cold smile. You already did that. I'm just making sure the trash is taken out. Then I shut the door in her face. I didn't wait to hear if she knocked again. I didn't care. I turned, walked back into my house, and never looked back. Emily never tried to contact me again after that. I heard through mutual friends that she had hit rock bottom, that she had burned through her savings, struggled to keep a job, and spent months trying to fix herself. But it was too late. She had destroyed everything that mattered. As for me, I moved on, healed. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the memories crept in, when the betrayal still stung like an old wound. But with time, the pain dulled. I focused on myself, on my career, on rebuilding my life. And one day, I met someone new. Someone kind. Someone loyal. Someone who looked at me the way Emily used to, before she threw it all away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. Truly, deeply, unshakably happy. Because in the end, I didn't lose Emily. She lost me. And that was a punishment far greater than anything I could have ever done to her. Bye-bye.